seated. And I'll just invite Neil to come forward and share.
Looking back at our childhood, we always knew Mum was exceptional, special and different. Mum had many great attributes: academically highly gifted and successful, as well as being a very able and accomplished sportswoman across many fields. She was maybe not the natural or archetypal traditional mum. She was different. Different certainly covers her approach to cooking. I think it's fair to say that despite many achievements, one of the country's great country house cooks, Mum was not. For her, the Findus crispy pancake was one of the great inventions of the 20th century, along with the microwave and the chips that go in it. To be honest, anatomy wasn't her very strongest suit either. Having roasted the Easter chicken one year, taking it out of the oven, she exclaimed indignantly, "This chicken has no breasts," until we pointed out that it might have been roasted upside down. But no tribute to Mum would be complete without mention of the Christmas pudding, the story of which has passed into family folklore. Having microwaved the Christmas pudding for a full 10 times longer than the prescribed amount, disaster was only averted by our timely arrival. The resulting remnant, doubtless containing small compounds of carbon as yet unknown to modern science, was put on the terrace to cool down, or should I say melt down. As Mark took up the pickaxe to deal it a lethal blow, Mum uttered the now immortal words, "Don't ruin it." But this difference was what Mum was so special. The house may have been chaos, the meals interesting, but she was absolutely clear about what mattered in our upbringing. She was absolutely unfailing in her support of us, particularly our studies, even at what was probably the expense of her own career. Always there to encourage, help, listen, and advise. 5 degrees, 4 fellowships, 3 theses, 2 medals, and a Master's of Theology are perhaps fitting testament to her belief in and devotion to us three. It was when I became a father the real ethos behind Mum's approach sank in for me, and for which I will be forever grateful. It was to always support, always encourage, to enable us, to make sure we had the opportunity to explore and be ourselves. She and Dad between them were always there to make childhood fun. They didn't mind at all our friends at the war parties careering round the house and garden. It was about the having fun that mattered. She even put up with the Borley Fire Brigade, running around, setting and putting out fires all round the house and garden. How come it was her and not us that ended up burning the house, I'll never know. Her support and encouragement was never stronger than after an exceptional and very memorable family holiday to Florida. First I, and then Mark, took up the novel sport of baseball and started the first of the fledgling Bobcat teams. If childhood memories are anything to go by, then she was a truly different but exceptional mum. And for her part in the gifts and support that made us three boys the people we are today, we shall be forever deeply thankful. I can only hope that I have passed on in some small part that devotion she showed us in memory of her to her grandchildren.
The poem, When Great Trees Fall, by Maya Angelou, poet and civil rights activist. When great trees fall, rocks on distant hills shudder. Lions hunker down in tall grasses, and even elephants lumber for safety. When great trees fall in forests, small things recoil into silence, their senses eroded beyond fear. When great souls die, the air around us becomes slight, rare, sterile. We breathe briefly, our eyes briefly see with a hurtful clarity. Our memory, suddenly sharpened, examines, gnaws, on kind words unsaid, promised walks never taken. Great souls die, and our reality, bound to them, takes leave of us. Our souls, dependent on their nurture, now shrink, wizened. Our minds, formed and informed by their radiance, fall away. We are not so much maddened as reduced to the unutterable ignorance of dark, cold caves. And when great souls die, after a period, peace blooms. Slowly and always irregularly, spaces fill with a kind of soothing electric vibration. Our senses, restored, never to be the same, whisper to us, they existed. They existed. We can be, and be better, for they existed. My mother had many things that inspired and motivated her throughout her life, keeping her mind active right until the end. This poem covers her family, her teaching career, her love of nature, stained glass, and of course, baseball. In memory's embrace, we gather today to honour dear Margaret, who has now gone her way. 95 years of courage and grace, a life told with stories that time can't erase. Her parents, like whispers, were a soft guiding breeze and gave her deep roots like tall, sturdy trees. And Donald, her brother, a bright star in her sky, together they played through the seasons gone by. And Colin, her husband, her love and dear friend, together they journeyed, a bond that won't end. Though she walked on without him, his spirit remains, in her smiles, in her stories, and in love's sweet refrains. In classrooms filled with learning, where knowledge took flight, Margaret shared her passion, made her their guiding light. With patience and kindness she opened each door, instilling a love for learning, for to grow evermore. Was in the arms of nature that Margaret found her peace. She wandered through meadows where all worries would cease. With each rustling leaf and with each fragrant bloom, her heart soared with the flowers, dispelling her gloom. 95 years of a life well spent, in colours and light her heart's intent. With hands that crafted and eyes that would gleam, she turned simple glass into a colourful scheme. With every cut she made, a story was told of a life lived fully, a spirit so bold. In sunlight's dance, her spirit will play. In stained glass windows, she'll never fade away. In baseball, she'd smile and guide them with care, teaching them teamwork, friendship, and how to play fair. Keep your eye on the ball, she'd call with delight, as they ran round the bases, chasing dreams in full flight. Her love for the game was a lesson in life, in every strikeout and triumph, in joy and in strife. She taught them resilience, to rise when they fall, to play with their hearts, giving their all. Now, as we gather to say our goodbyes, we honour dear Margaret, whose spirit is nigh. though she's taken her place in the heavens above, in the games of our lives, she remains with our love. For every pitch thrown, for each coloured pane, for everything that she was, for everything she became, we will cherish dear Margaret. We will cherish our mother. We miss her so much, there could be no other.
I thought I was going to be a professional, but I'm afraid my brothers have reduced me to tears. How does one pay tribute to such a long, varied and impactful life as Margaret's? Of course, it would be impossible to cover even a fraction of it. But hopefully, as I share memories of some of the main aspects, it will help you to remember Margaret, her life, and what she meant to each one of you. Margaret was born at Gillingham Naval Hospital in 1929 to Leonard and Peggy Letchford. Her father was a shipwright in Chatham Dockyard and her mother worked in the Army Pay Office. She joined her older brother Don in the family home in Malvern Road, Gillingham. When her father became a teacher at Maidstone Technical School for Boys, the family moved to 32 Cranbourne Avenue, Maidstone, a beloved family home. Margaret's childhood was deeply affected by the Second World War, including a period of evacuation to South Wales alongside her much-loved Aunt Agnes, another teacher in the family. There was also rationing and constant bombing raids, and Margaret vividly remembered nights spent on the roof of the school with her father on air raid watch, seeing the sky over London glowing an eerie red. Margaret herself only narrowly survived a bomb being dropped on Maidstone town centre, right in front of the bus she was travelling on to school. Fortunately, the blast went in the opposite direction. That saved her life. After the war, Margaret went to Bristol University, studying English and French. And it was here that she met her future husband, Colin, a physicist who helped develop radar. Now, to be honest, there were two distinctly different accounts of the start of their relationship. What they agreed upon was that they remembered first meeting at a poetry reading given by Colin's Nobel Prize-winning physics professor. Margaret remembers a slow, steady courtship. What Colin remembered was a meeting of eyes, which at the very first signalled the future. Margaret went on to study education in preparation for what had long been her chosen vocation, teaching. But as well as excelling academically, as Neil said, Margaret was a passionate and gifted sportswoman. She played for and captained the university hockey team and won full colours. She also played cricket for the university women's team, very unusual in the 1950s and an indication of her pioneering nature. Having got engaged at university, Margaret and Colin married in 1952 at her family church, St Margaret's, Gillingham. They bought their first home in Brookmead, Hildenborough, a post-war prefab. And from here, Margaret commuted to teach at Maidstone College. They later moved to a bungalow in Hadlow Road, where I was born in 1961. And at this point, Mum went part-time as a teacher to allow plenty of time with family. When Neil was born in 1966, she stopped paid teaching to concentrate on nurturing her family, a typically selfless move, as Neil's already indicated. It meant giving up a career she was passionate about. But she tirelessly nurtured me, Neil and Nigel to be the best we could be. That was truly at the heart of who Margaret was, wanting people to be their very best. She played for Tunbridge Wells Hockey Club for many years, and at county level she represented Kent on many, many occasions. She was also secretary, then president of Kent Women's Hockey Association. And it was at hockey that Margaret met Mick, another Margaret actually, a McBain, also proudly of Scottish ancestry. And Mick came to live with us for 10 years, during which time she trained as a teacher, inspired by Margaret. And I'm just going to mention that her grandson has just got his first teaching post at a prestigious grammar school. Margaret continued her love of education, providing tutoring to local children. She also coached netball and other sports in local schools. But undoubtedly, her greatest sporting achievement was initiating and promoting youth baseball to an unprecedented level. Having founded Tunbridge Youth Baseball single-handedly from scratch, she also started an extensive schools programme, attracting a truly incredible number of youngsters. What was particularly remarkable was how she managed to include people of all backgrounds and abilities, including kids that everybody else had given up on. She had an incredible ability to relate to all young people, from well-spoken high flyers to quite literally the roughest kids in Tunbridge. She made them all feel valued and welcomed. She was also instrumental in pioneering women's baseball in a serious way for the first time and was rightly known as the grandmother of British baseball. The flood of tributes to her from literally all over the world, saying how she made a huge difference to many young people's lives, is an amazing testimony to the impact she had. It wasn't just the hundreds of young people Margaret encouraged to take part, or the steady stream of future Great Britain internationals that she helped develop, which marked her coaching. She famously believed that everyone deserved a chance and encouraged everyone to achieve their personal best. She was also famous for her devotion for fair play and sportsmanship. And I think these values of being inclusive, becoming the best you can be, and playing full on but fair were at the heart of who Margaret was. And I know she's left an incredible legacy inspiring these values in others. Margaret was awarded an MBE for services to sport in 2007. She was honoured as a life member of the British Baseball Federation for her work in promoting youth baseball in the UK. And she received a Lifetime Achievement Award from Tunbridge and Malling Borough Council. She was chosen as the representative of British baseball to sign the Millennium Commemorative Ball, along with legends from all over the world. Indeed, legend was the word that's most commonly been used to describe her impact. Margaret was also a guest of honour at the first ever Major League Baseball game played in the UK at the London Olympic Stadium in 2019. Developing youth baseball brought together two of Margaret's great passions, education and sport, and she truly excelled in what she did. But Margaret was a woman of many talents and passions. She had a great love of history, and as long as I can remember, visited all kinds of ancient sites, from barely visible burial mounds to ornate palaces and country houses. Margaret also had a great love of nature in all sorts of forms. She was actively involved in the RSPB, Kent Trust for Nature Conservation, the British Butterfly Society, and was a fundraiser for World Wildlife. And I fondly remember the huge panda collecting figure that lived in our house for many years. She supported a whole array of animal charities and gave a loving home to 7 dogs, the majority of which were rescues. And of course, there was her commitment to and involvement in church. Margaret had a lifelong faith, something inspired by the example of her parents. And in turn, she helped inspire me to become a vicar. She had an unpushy but fervent Christian faith. She not only believed in the teaching of Jesus, she put it into practice in everyday life. She was brought up in the Church of Scotland, having a Scottish mother, but she found her home here in Tunbridge at Christ Church. I know she particularly enjoyed the midweek home group with a variety of activities, not least the quizzes, where she was always a sought-after team member because of her remarkable general knowledge. Indeed, personally speaking, her passing has deprived me of one of my obvious phone-a-friend candidates. Particular mention should and has been made of her hobby of stained glass, which she developed relatively late in life. This brought out her artistic side, which she first showed when she did wildlife drawings as a girl. She threw herself into various forms of glassworking wholeheartedly, making a huge variety of items, from large-scale stained glass panels to delicate jewellery. She also gave many talks on the subject, drawing on her skill as a very accomplished public speaker. Her diversity of interests and activities was really quite extraordinary. These included, but is not limited to, the Women's Institute, geology, keeping tropical fish, coin and stamp collecting, murder mysteries, and games and sports of all kinds. The list goes on and on. Very sadly, she lost Colin, who she described as her knight in shining armour, really quite unexpectedly in 2008. But this didn't deter her from living life to the full with that dogged determination which characterised her. She carried on existing hobbies and friendships and developed new ones. But perhaps final mention should go to her home life. Neil has already stolen my thunder in saying that she was hardly a candidate for perfect housewives. I remember her signature gist being fish fingers and mash. But she nonetheless created a nurturing and stimulating home in her beloved 61 The Drive, which she and Colin moved to in 1966. It was, as Neil has said, an exceptional privilege to grow up in a home and garden where you could explore so many life-affirming things. Margaret certainly knew her own mind, but she was also broad-minded and accepting, one of the many things I'm grateful for her passing on to me. Tragically, Margaret suffered a major house fire in 2020, right at the heart of the COVID pandemic. And this meant she had to leave her beloved family home in the Drive for 4 years, which she found really hard. However, she carried on with that redoubtable spirit to continuing to keep going in tough times as well as good. I, for one, was convinced she would live to 100 and get her congratulations telegram from the King. To her great joy, she was able to return to 61 at the beginning of December. This enabled her to delight in Christmas at home, enjoying a great celebration with family, something to be very thankful for. She was still active in many ways, and it was a huge shock when she suddenly had to go into hospital on the 25th of January with pneumonia. Despite a poor prognosis, she fought to get better with her typical strength of spirit, and I really thought she was going to pull through. She was still watching quiz shows and answering really tricky questions that I couldn't. And even on her final evening, she was gently singing along to her favourite hymns, despite having an oxygen tube in place. How do you summarise such a talented, versatile, giving person who lived such a full and rich life? I turn to two of the phrases used in the many tributes to Margaret. What a woman. What a life. We're going to see some photos of Margaret now from throughout her life. And this will be accompanied by a piece of music from the baseball-themed film Field of Dreams. And this piece of music is all the more touching as the scene it portrays is where the main character meets again with his father in what seems like heaven. As we look at the photos and hear the music, may you be inspired with your own thoughts and memories of Margaret and what she meant to you.